Welcome. Happy to have you aboard today on the Seasoned Citizens Present. Today we're going to present to you John Hugh Bunn, a local man who's become quite involved in the Little League, and we'll get into that a little later. Welcome, Hugh.
How do you do, Don? Glad to be here.
Happy to have you aboard. Now, again, you notice I addressed him as Hugh. His name is John Hugh Bunn, but were you to ask almost anyone in the vicinity about John Bunn, they'd say, don't know him particularly, and a lot of Bunns. Is any relation to Hugh or Art? Because John was not a name that became synonymous with Hugh Bunn from day one.
That's right. Why, I don't know, but I've always been called Hugh, which is my middle name. Until a few years back, I got in trouble with the IRS and my income tax. Somehow or another, one of my paychecks evidently went in as under the name of John Hugh Bunn. And they got to checking their records. They didn't have any record set up for John Hugh Bunn, so I got a letter from him wanting to know how come I hadn't been filing any income tax.
Shame on you.
Yeah, I know, and I had to get a lawyer to get out of that. So from now on, I call myself John Hugh or J. Hugh. Or
yeah, had to kind of
include both names.
Well, like you said, even your parents, your mother, you said you recall vividly, always addressed you as Hugh.
Yeah, everybody.
So, therefore, obviously, the Hugh became the name of record, as it were, at the time. So that wasn't anything different now, but now we're Hugh, and everyone knows Hugh. Okay, where were we born, Hugh?
I was born down at Letts, just south of here, and I lived there until I was 5 years old, and then I moved to Muscatine. Lived here the rest of my life.
Been here all the rest of that time. You were educated then in the public schools here. I mean, you went to the school areas all throughout here and everything.
Well, I went first grade at Letts.
Well, you did the first grade at Letts and then moved into the big town.
Moved to Muscatine, yeah.
Okay.
That time you could go to the first grade when you were 5 years old. So
yeah, I think that's true back then. We started rather early. Kindergarten wasn't something that was really spoke of that much. At least I don't recall attending kindergarten ever, but maybe there was, but I skipped the sandbox, I think.
I did too.
Okay. What were some of your first experiences in making money, working as a job?
Well, the first one I can recall is delivering telegrams for Western Union Telegraph Company. I did that for several years, and then I did like most of the young guys did back in those days. I pulled onions and for Heinz's and detasseled corn and did all those good jobs.
Right, they were good at the time. They paid not very dearly, but at least it was money that we had need for in our youth. I mean, there was not a lot. I don't know about you, have any what is nowadays called a program giving the kids a bit of money to spending, and I didn't have it. Maybe I'm sure you didn't either.
The only money I got was when I would go out and pick up bottles or go junking or something and get a few dollars, a few dimes.
Yeah. Back to the Western Union, I think we'll kind of bring in there. Ray Dunker was the man of Western Union for so many years. He was Western Union here. Also was on the Board of Education for many years. Wonderful gentleman.
Yes.
Just a real nice
He also
man.
served as mayor, too.
That's right. He was a mayor here, too. Thank you. I'd forgotten that he was also in the mayoral category, too. Okay.
I have a good picture of Ray Dunker that
Really?
Somebody might be interested in looking at. I bought a brand new bicycle when I went to work down there. And if you remember Ray, he was pretty chunky.
Portly.
And he came out and sat on that bicycle, and I was so nervous I didn't know what to do because I was afraid he was going to blow the tires out.
Break it.
But anyhow, he wanted me to take his picture, so I did.
That would be interesting to see. No charges are Hugh, if they want to see that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Now we're getting into manhood. What are we doing then? What are we doing about a job then?
Well, after I got out of the Navy, I worked for a short time.
That's right. We have a service. I always neglect that.
Well, I didn't serve much time in the Navy. But after I got out, I went to work at the Ordnance Steel Foundry in Bettendorf for a short time.
Okay.
And then, not too long after that, I went to work at grain processing. And I got married also at the same time.
About that same area. Okay.
And I was there for 40 years, so.
That's where you found the place to be proper. And you stayed with it for 40 years. Now that's
a good place to be.
Oh yes, and unheard of this day and age. I don't think people ever contend or even dream or even think about staying. I know my wife stayed over 30-some years too, but just isn't a thing nowadays. In the first place, retirement is looked at a little earlier than you and I ever thought about, I'm sure. Okay, we've married to a lovely lady here. We have children.
Yeah, I have 2 daughters,
Okay,
Linda Connell and Julie Kaelberg.
okay, and they're both in the area. I
They
know
both live in Muscatine, and
Okay.
they're both married and have 2 children each.
they're with children, so you're a grandpa.
Mhm.
How about that? You don't look like a grandpa, really.
They don't feel like one either.
Doesn't take much, does it? Okay, now, along in here, having daughters, you weren't involved, I want to say, in Little League. In other words, Little League was something not particularly of your thinking with girls. I'm not being facetious, but I mean, you know, if you had boys, you'd be right in there. But nonetheless, you did take to enjoying Little League.
Mhm.
Okay, now would you relate how you came about this with a gentleman here in town who had been involved heavily in Little League and says to you, will you please help me out, or something of that degree? Would you tell about that, please?
Yeah, that was back before actually Little League was in Muscatine.
Okay, it wasn't called, that's right.
No, it was called Muscatine Midget League,
Okay.
and Bob Varney is a gentleman that got me involved. He was managing a team, and he put him on 311 shifts, and naturally he couldn't manage a team while he's working nights, so he asked me if I would take it for a couple of weeks until he got off the night shift. So I consented to take it, and I enjoyed it. And
Obviously.
been there ever since.
Yes, yes. Now that was midget. I'd forgotten. You told me the Midget League is how it started. When did it officially become a part? Now, may I ask this first? Was Little League formed at that time?
It was,
yeah, it started,
not
I
in
mean-
Muscatine, but it
Yeah,
was around the
okay.
country.
When did it come about that you, or whoever, I'd say you because you're obviously connected highly with it, get the notice or the idea of joining the Little League as it was formed?
That was in, I believe it was 1962. There's several of us got together and decided we'd like to get into Little League. We'd heard about it. Bob Varney was instrumental in it, and
Okay.
I hate to name names because I'm sure I'll leave somebody out, but
Well,
Charlie Drake and Bob Musser and several of those guys and myself
sure.
got together, and we got the information and decided to form a Little League.
Well, great. Now, was there any, there was some formality to it, but was there any fees connected or anything? Did you
Oh,
have
yes,
to?
you have to pay them a charter fee.
Okay.
And one of the requirements that they have is that every team in your league has to have full baseball uniforms. And they have to have the proper safety equipment. And that costs a lot of money, and
Oh, it
we
would.
didn't have any. So we decided to go around and get sponsors for the teams. And some of the people that were not too much involved said it'd be impossible for us to get that kind of sponsorship in this town. And I thought,
You showed them, didn't you?
I thought they were
You.
right for a while because I asked several before they said yes. Finally, one of them said yes, and the next thing I knew, we had them all. Because once you get one of them in line,
I think that makes a
they
difference.
just fall in.
They follow. Well, I know nowadays, I don't recall that much back then, I'd confess that, but nowadays, I think every car dealer and what have you definitely is in the action now when you see the July 4th parade and what have you, then they show all the little leaguers in the pickup trucks in the first place, second place, and what have you. They're all very proud of what they've accomplished. I think it's great. I mean, what better foundation can you have for a young man than get into Little League? Because it's an excellent program, you know.
It's a good program for the kids, and it really doesn't hurt the adults because
No.
it tends to keep a few of the adults in line for a while too. So
How much trouble have you endured with parents not being happy with your umpiring or what have you? Obviously, my kid's better, you know. Why isn't he in there, Hugh? Why isn't you?
we
why aren't you
have
playing
had a
him?
little, Don, but not really too
Nothing
much
bad.
compared to other towns
Yeah.
because
Well, you read of it, you know.
we made up our mind when we first started Little League that we would ride herd on everything that went on. And
Start right out.
one of the board members was at every game, all summer long.
Oh, great.
And if anything came up, we took care of it right on the spot. And didn't let it get out of hand. And
Well, that's,
we had very little problem with them, really.
well, you were smart in getting into that action right away with it now.
I think that's one reason we
Survived. or
have such
whatever.
a good program, and we still have most of the original sponsors are
Really?
still sponsoring teams.
Isn't that fantastic? Now, where did you get the umpires?
They're all volunteers, and we
Sure.
were fortunate enough to have some really good volunteer umpires.
You really did.
And,
Almost professional.
In fact, Muscatine was pretty well known for their volunteer Little League umpires for quite a few years.
Really? They stuck out, in other words. They were distinguished in the context of everything.
People from around the area would call and ask if we would furnish some of our sanctioned umpires.
Really?
We didn't have any sanctioned umpires, but they thought they were.
They were so well trained and everything. They thought they were.
They did a great job.
Oh, good. Okay, you're starting now to get really involved in it, and from that factor, then you start moving into some of the higher echelons of Little League. Now, I'm speaking of the local or what? Well, you explain where you first started in the Little League faction. I mean, what it's called.
Well, Bob Varney was the first Little League president.
Okay.
And I was the vice president. And Bob served a couple of years as president. Then I was elected president in 1965, I think. 64. And served in that capacity for a couple of years. And then I was elected district administrator.
That's what I was thinking of. You went up in the ranking.
What that entails is you have a section of the state of Iowa that you're in charge of, and you're responsible for being the liaison man between headquarters and the leagues, and helping the leagues solve any problems they may have, and getting out, try to organize new leagues and that type of thing.
Okay. How many, just curious-wise, how many were on the board? As an example, how many did you have on your board of Little League in Muscatine, as an example? At one time, usually.
It ran from 12 to 18. Actually, that's a pretty good-sized board, and it gets kind of cumbersome sometimes, but...
Was that mandatory, or was that your own choice?
No, it wasn't mandatory. We had to have a board. That was mandatory.
Yeah.
But the number was left up to
That was your
local
option
leagues.
on that, okay. I was just curious, because you said you were elected, which signifies there was an election of some sort to bring you into the presidency or whatever, so. Then the other, was that sanctioned again by an election idea, or you just appointed as deputy commissioner that you spoke of?
I was elected to that.
Again, elected by a group then
Well,
of the...
all the presidents of all of the leagues in my district, which is
Okay, then they formed
the
a
eastern
board.
fourth of Iowa.
Okay, good enough, okay. Then we found out how the Little League was formed. Next question we'll get into, I think we have facilities, again, that are above and beyond most areas in, I don't want to say just eastern Iowa, I think in the Midwest, actually, with the Kent Stein Park. And those who haven't seen Kent Stein Park, it's a fantastic layout. Again, with the name Kent Stein, it indicates how it came about. So I think Hugh can expand there a little further how it came about. And Ollie Bentley, if I can bring that in now, Ollie Bentley was on the Park Commission.
He was park commissioner.
He had a great bearing on what transpired then in the Little League Foundation.
Yeah, that's right, Don. He, at one time, the main softball diamond in Muscatine was Oregon Field. And all of the league games practically were played at Oregon Field, all the tournaments. And it was one of the best ball diamonds, as far as the playing field is concerned, in the state of Iowa at the time. But I guess GPC or Kent Feeds wanted to acquire that ground for future expansion. And of course the South End Athletic Club, which built the diamond, didn't want to give it up. But in the process they negotiated a deal with the ball club that they would buy ground and build another ball diamond for them, and then pay them so much, and Kent Stein would take over the Oregon Field. That's my understanding of how it happened, and I was there at the time, so I think that is the way it happened. But they bought the old Smalley pasture ground down there by the slough, and they donated money to the Park Commission to build the softball diamonds. And they started out with a softball diamond, and then they, somehow or another, I'm not sure to this day how they got involved with Little League, Kent Stein. But I heard that Mr. Stein was impressed with the program and all the kids that were involved, and he was instrumental in getting going on it. But anyhow, they donated some money to the Park Commission to build Little League diamonds. And then Ollie, of course, was in charge of building them, and he got the board of Little League, me and Bob Varney and Charlie Drake and a few together, and we went down and gave him the plans and specs for the ball diamonds because they have to meet certain specifications.
Right, your diamond there, you might explain, is a little lesser
Yeah,
dimensions.
it's about a
than you would be-
2/3 size of a full-size diamond.
Like your running base is about 60 foot?
60 foot for the bases,
Okay.
and pitcher's mound is 46 feet away. Outfield fence is 200 foot away all the way around, as opposed to 350 to 400 feet for the big boys.
That brings up a question in my mind I'm going to throw at you. How many diamonds down there are set to those dimensions? Or can they be, well, they can't hardly be expanded. I mean,
Well,
there's Church League down there playing right now, and I don't think they're playing on the...
no, they play on softball diamonds.
Okay.
And they're a little bit different. They're pretty
Sure.
close to Little League
Well,
dimensions.
they're not quite expanded out to baseball.
The outfield fences are farther
Okay,
away, but
okay.
the infield and that are pretty close to Little League
Question all of a
dimensions.
sudden here. Thank you.
And we have, at the present time, 7 Little League fields.
Oh, there are 7 in there.
And then there's 2 bigger fields for the older age of Little Leagues and the Pony and Colt League. And then there's some girls softball diamonds and men's slow pitch softball.
Okay, you brought up the age. Can you tell us the age foundation of the Little League and then the Pony League and on up the scale, as it were?
Well, the age for Little League is from 8 to 12.
Okay.
And then they have a junior league division of Little League, which is 13-year-olds only.
Just one age only.
Yeah, and then 14 and 15 is what they call the senior league. And
By that time, they should be ready for high school baseball.
if they're ever going to be, they should be.
Right. If they've really done well, and I think by then, well, most of them have by that time made a decision too. I mean, they're coming into that era and high school, and we've had some decent high school baseball teams here. And I know we've had some excellent college, of course, junior college. Of course, they don't necessarily come from just our own system, but we have had some good there. Okay, now you are now being sought after more than just a district. Now you've had the opportunity. Did you originally go to a game, a Little League World Series, as it were, to start with, or were you?
Yeah, I went
given-
to several games.
Okay.
And of course, we have meetings, regional meetings every year where the
Okay.
district administrators around the Midwest get together
Okay.
and go over their problems and so forth.
You had
and-
problems?
Every 2 years, they have what they call a Congress. It's an international Congress.
Okay.
And I went to all of them since I've been involved in Little League. And they're held anywhere from Boston to Los Angeles to Tampa, anywhere around the country. And that's an international deal. And I assume that's where some of the people got to know who I was, and eventually somebody nominated me for the board of directors. So
Okay, and you served on the board of directors for how many years then? You.
well, it's a 3-year term, and you're only allowed 1 term. So
After that, then you can no longer. Are you a consultant yet, though? I know you still attend. I know that. You just
Yeah.
went to the one recently. I know that you had attended. That was just shortly before we made a decision to air this. So, oh, incidentally, I'll say this in case you're not aware. Williamsport, Pennsylvania, is where we are talking. Where we hold. Is that right, Williamsport?
Mhm.
Say it right there. Which is the home, as it would be, of Little League. Now, again, since I'm saying that, would you explain how Little League became founded, as it were, in Williamsport? There's a story there.
In 1939, there was a guy in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, that had a couple of nephews and some neighborhood kids that were too little to play on the Legion ball clubs and the different types of clubs they had going around there, but they wanted to play ball. So he decided he was going to put together a couple teams so they'd have a place to play. So he originally there was 3 teams in Williamsport. That's all there was. But they bought the uniforms for them and all the equipment and everything, built them a nice field to play on, and it grew from 3 fields to about 60 the second year. And then every year from then on, it just kept going by leaps and bounds. And then they expanded to international field and went to Canada and Mexico and South America. And now we have Little League in 60 countries around the world.
Really expanded. Tremendous.
And Little League is where all the World Series are played because they have a stadium there that they can handle 40,000 people. And while we're talking about the people that go there, a lot of people figure that Little League is, they charge admission to get into those World Series games. They have 40,000 fans at the game, and they sell tons of concessions and everything there. Those concessions are sold cheaper than the concessions are sold here in Muscatine.
Oh my, very
and
unusual.
nobody pays anything to get in a ball diamond. The whole thing is free. Just as Little League is in Muscatine, it is the same over there. It's all free.
Okay. Can I ask something, though? Maybe it's out of context, but I'm going to ask anyhow. Do you receive some funds from ESPN and ABC for filming?
They do, I'm sure, but
I mean, that's usual the way.
yeah.
I'm not being facetious.
No, they get a fee.
We're not getting paid much today, you know, now, Hugh. Don't expect any fee today, will you?
Well, I do.
Okay.
No, they get a fee.
Now, that
I'm
goes into
sure
funds, then, of your...
from
company,
ABC Sports. I know the Wide World of Sports. They televise the World Series
Surely,
along with
surely.
the ESPN, and they do get a fee from them, I'm sure.
No big thing, because that would probably go into a fund to offset some of the expense that is incurred at the World Series. In other words, you're saying there's no fee collected from the people. Maybe the concessions do make some of the...
Those are all
Those private...
those are private
enterprises?
organizations such as Eastern Star and Girl Scouts and what have you.
Oh, I see.
They operate those concession stands, and
Nothing to do with
they get
funds
the-
into the Little League. Okay, another factor I think we've discussed briefly. You've already said, bring up the fact that there is no other function of sports that are compacted into the time that you get your World Series done with the amount of teams you have involved. Would you expound on that?
Well, to give you an example, as some of you know, probably most people know, that our tournament time is from the middle of July to about the middle of August, sometimes a 5-week period. And we start out with about 9,000 teams, and in that period of time we have to narrow that down to one team. And in the process of doing that, we play more ball games in that 5-week period than all of the big league professional teams in the United States play in a year's time. So I can't tell you how many games because it's a large figure, but
You'd be at real tough.
to give you some idea of how many games are played in that short period of time, and it goes off just like clockwork, which is a tribute to...
I have had occasion, like I've said, to tune in and watch our local, country-wise, win this year. We won last year, but by default. So let's talk a bit about that, because you were obviously involved in that. A year ago, after having the Taiwan, is that correct?
Philippines. A year ago,
Philippines
yeah.
win the title through trial and error. I don't know exactly how it came about, but someone discovered that their team was not intact as the rules were to be, like the 12-year-olds. You were finding some discrepancy in that.
Well, actually, their own people turned them in.
Okay.
But we had suspected, or at least I have, and I'm sure a lot of other people have too, that there was something wrong with the structure over there for years. Because I can't see how 12-year-olds from Taiwan can beat 12-year-olds from the United States or anywhere else in the world consistently year after year by 20 runs or more.
No.
And so we knew something was wrong, and we sent people over there to check and tried every way to figure out what was wrong, and we couldn't figure out. Everything looked like it was on the up and up. And finally, last year, somebody from the Philippines turned them in. What they were doing is they had a 15-year-old kid who was a good ball player, and he had a 12-year-old brother. So the 15-year-old kid was taking the identity of the 12-year-old. He used his birth certificate, his name, and everything else, and played as that 12-year-old. And size-wise, you couldn't tell the difference because
Well, you
they're all
said
about the same.
they're diminutive. They
Yeah.
never seemed to get to any stature at all.
And come to find out, that Philippines team had, I think it was 9 boys that were too old, and the rest of them didn't even live within the league boundaries. The manager and coach were illegal. They were professional manager and coaches, which is not allowed by Little League. And, well, the whole thing was just a farce. So
In your mind, what do you think, because there's no prize money involved and maybe a trophy, what do you think caused them to cheat, as it were? Were they looking for, I mean, you know, it's strange that they, because like I said, they're not going to take home $100,000 or even $5,000 or $1. You do award a trophy, I think, but that's about the extent of it.
well, in my opinion, Don, I think it's a matter of national prestige with those countries
see.
over there. They don't have much to brag
Well,
about.
they have nothing else really to lean
And
on.
they evidently saw where they could maybe do that and bring attention to
something
their
to 'em.
countries on a worldwide
Well-
basis. And the other reason I think they started trying to win so bad and get their recognition is because now that baseball is becoming an Olympic sport.
True.
And they want to
It's
get
going to be
it going real well in the Far East. And so they figure if they get the attention, their program will be
Sets them up a little bit, right?
build up.
Well, you and I had talked previously. You know, it was always a wonderment in the big leagues, national and American. You rarely see any one coming from that structure, and there are some. I mean, like you see a number of them from Puerto Rico. You'll hear of Sandy Koufax played Little League. I mean, different times they will make mention that they had done. Never have I seen a Filipino or a Taiwan ever, and that's why, like you said, they just get to a certain stature, and that's the extent. They just no longer go any further.
That's right. And it's very rare if any of those kids ever make it to the big leagues
Yes.
because of that.
I think we have one now, don't you? The pitcher from Long Beach.
From Long Beach.
Oh, we have.
I think he could be a
shoe
shoe-in, in my opinion. If nothing happens to him,
He was fantastic.
He'll be a
I did happen
shoo-in.
to see that game. He pitched and batted the Long team to victory. He didn't get to play the championship game again, as Hugh explained to me. They're allowed only. They will not overtax them. They are 12-year-olds, so they don't attempt. If it kind of gets a little bit anxious for the manager, thinking, "Oh, I got to win," they don't allow it. They can go so far. What is it? 2 games or every other day?
Every
or
other
something?
game.
Yeah.
Every other game.
So the man had to forsake. And like I say, why wouldn't he wait the last game? Hugh says he wanted to get in the final game, so he utilized his best man. And let me tell you, he's chubby little Dickens, but oh my, he just was a natural. Well, we don't see him in the big leagues. I'm going to be totally amazed. What's the name again? You probably, come on, Hugh, you can remember. It's your game.
I knew you were going to ask me that. His father was a baseball player of the year in one of the California professional leagues.
Which make a difference.
Can't think of it right now, but
Well,
just been a few years back, too.
but anyhow, again, he was fabulous, and I marveled. You see a lot, not just him. You see a lot. If you watch that, when it's on in September, there is, well, they were from all over, like Germany. Now, Hugh explained something that was kind of funny about Germany. Tell me what you were telling me about Germany.
Well, originally, the teams that came from Germany were composed mostly of sons of American servicemen that were stationed in Germany. They formed the Little League over there originally, but now,
Under the German hospital.
the local people in Germany are getting involved in Little League, and some of the kids that are not children of the American servicemen are still playing Little League ball.
Okay.
And it's getting more so all the time now because of the downfall of the Soviet Empire,
Yes.
for one thing, and we have Russia involved and Yugoslavia and all those countries.
Well, you mentioned how many teams you have
There's
involved.
60 leagues,
Yeah.
60 countries.
Fabulous. And it's great because, like I said, I remember here recently there was an older group of Russian high school area that came through the area and were playing local here in Davenport and exchanging ideas. And someone has said the year before they were poor. This year they're playing quite good ball.
They get better every year.
Yeah, well, certainly after they are allowed to actually get out and work on it, we find it. Well, Hugh, again, we made it. It's been an excellent time talking to you and finding out all these things, and I
enjoyed
surely
it.
appreciate your taking your time today. And I have one little thing left to offer to the public that I hope will be of interest to them before I say off. Don't let old age be the winter of your life. Let it be the harvest. And with that, I will say thank you again for watching us. We thank you for being with us, and Thank you to the Commission on Aging for allowing us to do the program, and TCI for the use of the studios. Goodbye.